sunrise sectors that you all recommend? Yes, go ahead.
I believe agriculture, we have a low base. And then if we want the percentages to come in, we know that if the base is very low, we can obviously get the percentages. Why doesn't India Inc. get really into the farming sector and then do something about agriculture? We know that 60% of the population lives in the rural areas, and it is a totally disorganized...
And is your recommendation that they organize it, that they add the technology to the entire
consolidate it, and then get the scales going?
Sure.
So why doesn't India Inc. do that?
Okay, more from this side. Go ahead.
Sir.
Yeah.
So what about infrastructure? As in we have not talked, we have actually not talked about infrastructure over here. It's said to be one of the biggest sectors right now where the government of India is ready to spend money on, and even the India Inc. is ready to spend a lot of money. We are talking about actually starting a new stock group. I would say a company where it will be floated in the stock index, and it will be specifically for the road development. So what are we talking about infrastructure?
I think that's fair, and it's definitely a priority sector that's been identified here. Just want to do a few more, and then we'll come back to what they are.
I think the major problem with India is that Indian economy is sublimating. It is directly going from agriculture to service economy. Whereas if you see China, it's following a simple path, which is from agriculture to manufacturing. So my point is that is the main reason why the development is not reaching the common man, because manufacturing industry, if you are going to set up, you have to find place in the agriculture in India.
Do you not believe that the service industry is the industry of the future? And if we've leapfrogged, and some of the leapfrogging has also helped us a lot.
Reason why the major population in India has been left behind. That is the reason why education has not reached the lower sector of the...
because we've leapfrogged from agriculture to service? Is that your view?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Dutt, I think you wanted to comment specifically on his thought process of agriculture to service, and we've left out manufacturing in between, and that could be the reason why half of India is not getting the touch.
He said about with the comparison with China. You cannot have the comparison of China and India because we are having democracy and they don't have. So we are slowly progressing. You see, 50 years back, what was India? Below poverty line, there were 50%. Now you are having less than 20%. So the growth is there and government is doing their job, and you will see. Now, Prime Minister has given, when they interviewed, he said that after 1 year, he will be having a roadmap wherein next 10 years, the growth should be 10%. And if this growth goes 10% for 10 years, India will be the third largest super economic power by 2020. So that is the way we are looking at, and we are having a long-term vision. I think it will be possible.
And I think the credibility of young India on that particular statement is a little low, because we're at 1 trillion. The US is a $14-15 trillion economy. They're going to grow at some rate. They're not going to be wished away. So we'll have to get to 20 trillion economy in the next 10 to 20 years for us to be able to do that. And I think what young India wants to feel very strongly is, do we have a roadmap for that? And I think that's part of the reason and part of our discussions that we're having here in that context. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I think power sector also needs a significant focus from the government, because India is facing severe power shortage, and I think if that is not catered to, it will going to pose a severe hindrance in growth, and that target 10%.
Sure. Absolutely. So I'm just going to get to the next point here, and maybe throw it open to Ashwin to start with. But I think, I don't want to put the halo of disinvestment, because that brings up a very macro discussion. But I would rather, because we've got a young audience here, should the government really be in the business of managing businesses, or should they be in the business of government? And I think that's the key question. Now, having said that, it's because our banks, I think, were nationalized that we did get actually to a certain extent insulated from what was the world sort of slowdown overall. So we need to look at the cup that is half full and half empty. But should the government really be in the business of being in business, running an airline, running banks, running the oil sector, or actually, and you've made a bid, sir, for Indian Airlines if they want to privatize it at any given stage. So,
well, as Margaret Thatcher said, the government has no business to be in the business of business. So, in reality, and she went out and implemented this, and the results were there for everybody to see for the last, 25 years of the United Kingdom's progress. But, be that as it may, I think the overarching solution in this whole system lies in balance. And India has probably gotten, like Ronnie said, saved because of, the way our banks were structured, for example. Equally, I think, in a lot of other spheres, we see that the social need overarches the capital needs and other needs of this country. So I think it's all about balance. Provided we can find the right methodology of going forward with balance, I think we'll be on the right path.
You want to add to that?
I completely agree. In theory, as Ashwini said, the government shouldn't be in the business. But I think with the way India is, on two parts, one is the social aspect. The government presence does create a certain amount of social service. And the other thing which I find very interesting is that the government listens to its own companies within the sector closer than they do to the private sector. So where there is, it's more, they have a greater hands-on approach and they are more sensitive to issues when they have a business interest. So it's giving them a touch
Your point
feel.
of view on that?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't really, want the government regulating the sector with so much of intensity. So I would definitely like them to step down and let the industry, flourish. The shortage of capital where government is not able to, contribute as much is definitely telling on the industry. And maybe on one point, yes, that we may feel that we have been insulated, but maybe on the other hand, if the government hadn't been so involved, we may have grown much faster than what we are today.
Would we have grown much faster?
Well, it is a point of debate, a long debate will be required, but you see, whether government doing a business or not, government in USA was not doing any business. The bankers went there to them, Citibank, government please come and manage us. So sometimes government management is also good. So it's not necessary that all should be privatized. Some should be public, some should be privatized. And as the time comes, at that time privatization should take place.
So, yes.
I have a show of hands here. How many people here think that the government should be in the business of business? If it's a yes, please raise your hands.
That's interesting.
Let me ask
We
why then.
definitely want to know why.
Basically, my point of view was government should not be managing business, but it should be more pro-reform. Like we have a clear mandate right now, and government should look into more reforms. Like we can have labor reforms, or we can have other macro level reforms which will ultimately affect the business.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, I think if the government is not managing the businesses, basically will basically follow a US model wherein all the profits are privatized, and whenever it comes to the case of crisis, we have to spend public money, or the government has to spend its own revenue to get the bailout packages and all that stuff. Number one, and number two, I'd just like to ask, don't you think in a country like India with the demographic setup that India has, government rather than more trying to manage the business, just try and appease the masses? It won't let the retail prices go up for the kerosene or the crude oil go up, because it will be a political suicide. Rather than the clear intent of managing business, it's just trying to appease the masses and focus on...
So your view is that they're controlling industries that can control prices and then therefore can control the influence and the quality of life. Is that your key point there?
More than quality of life, it's just that they can appease masses on the certain basic issues.